Hello, everybody, and welcome to PTV's coverage of the NBA restart. I'm Wilnir Louis, the host for this show, and I have along with me three great fellas to break down everything that you need to know about the NBA. Ben Harris, Ronny Castaneda, and Ryan Clayton. So before we even get into the NBA talk, how are you guys doing with this whole pandemic and things starting to slowly lighten up here in New Jersey, but in other states just a little bit difficult. So how are you guys doing?
Taking it one day at a time, just, doing what we have to do, following the rules, making sure that I'm keeping everyone around me safe. And, everything we do, it might be little, but in the end, it's going to go to a bigger cause. We just have to respect it and just take it as it comes. But for the most part, it's good to know that our progress is being made. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, I think all we can do is take our own personal preventative measures and hope that they pan out and everybody around us is staying as safe as possible. But I'm here in Ohio, and I'd say timetable-wise, we're probably like a month and a half ahead of Jersey, like in terms of reopening things. And I don't know if it's the right thing to be doing, reopening everything, but I just hope we as a country can recover from this.
Yeah, I would have to agree with what Ben and Ronnie said. Same sentiments here. Just kind of taking it as, going back to normal life as slowly and as just kind of when I, myself, and everyone in my community is just comfortable with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like what Ronnie said, just taking everything a day at a time, because honestly, with this pandemic, we kind of have to do that. But everything is slowly but surely opening up and things are starting to resume in action. And now to get back to the topic at hand for our show, the NBA, everything shut down in March 11th, and we've saw some great basketball before everything had to shut down on March 11th. The Raptors had won 4 straight. We saw the Lakers get a huge couple of wins. The Nets even had a couple of big wins themselves. So, before this pandemic happened, what was one team that you really looked at and was like, this team can make a deep push in the playoffs, before everything happened?
I think besides the obvious teams, like you mentioned, the Lakers, Toronto, certainly Milwaukee as well, the Bucks. One team that kind of stood out to me, and I think it's a change of style that we saw was interesting. Houston really committing to the small ball. Not having like a player out there over, however tall PJ Tucker is. So that kind of style with Houston was very interesting to me because, again, we've seen small ball lineups before, but nothing to this magnitude where like they were trading away like Clint Capella and stuff, their starting center.
Yeah, I think it was wild to watch Houston go through that process of fully just saying, all right, Capella's out of town. This is our strategy now. And they ended the normal part of the regular season with 40 wins. So, to see that kind of success work with that insane style of basketball was really something. As for the team I was the most impressed by going down the stretch, I think Boston is playing some great basketball. They have a ton of depth, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be one of the most dynamic duos in the league for the next decade plus. So I'm excited to see what Boston can do here in the bubble.
And Ben, I'm going to just roll right off of you. I was going to say Boston too, because you have to look at their number one guy, Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum is honestly a beast right now with the numbers he's been putting up and the way he's just been playing the game and the leader that he's been for that Boston team. Not to mention, it was a Boston team that a lot of people were skeptical about because they had just lost Kyrie Irving, and amidst all the controversy that was coming from him a year ago, nobody really knew what, Boston was capable of. And, obviously Boston has a lot of depth. You have to give credit to Kemba Walker and, like you said, Jaylen Brown. But it's really been Jason Tatum who's been, kind of the glue that's been able to keep that team together and keep them pushing. So the Celtics have really surprised me. And not to mention or at least they were starting to heat up at the perfect time when they were getting ready for a playoff push.
Yeah, those 3 teams definitely are 2 teams, because it's only the Boston Celtics and the Rockets that you really talked about. I think a team that I was interested in seeing, honestly, the Nets were really surprising me down the stretch. I mean, they were putting up some big numbers, getting some great wins down the stretch. And, of course, we know that Kyrie Irving and KD both weren't really playing that much down the stretch. But to see some of the younger players like LeVert, slowly stepping up and slowly start becoming better players, it would have been interesting to see what they would have done if the pandemic did not happen. Meanwhile, on the flip side, another team that I was interested to see rebound would have been the Milwaukee Bucks. They lost 3 straight before the pandemic happened, and of course, they're the best team in the NBA in terms of record. So it would have been interesting to see how they would have rebounded off of those 3 straight losses. But outside of that, though, there was news that the NBA is not taking action within the bubble in terms of their end of the season awards. So MVP, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, those awards. So, you had a lot of players that was hoping to make that final push in the bubble to try to get those awards, but now unable to do so. So essentially, with all the action that happened before March 11th, who would be your picks to win those awards?
Well, I think looking at some of the awards, let's start off with the MVP. Obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo was having, another monster year, and a lot of people didn't think he'd have a year as great as the one he did a season ago. But obviously, he shut up a lot of the media and continued to do that. But like you mentioned, Wilnir or at least his team lost 3 straight games right before the season was cut short. And a big reason why is because he didn't play those last 2 games. And when you look at that and see everything else that's happening, that just spurs questions. Whereas the guy who I think is going to win MVP and surely deserves MVP, LeBron James, has stepped up a lot in that role, or at least in those 2 minus games, because in the games that Giannis didn't play, LeBron went and scored 28 points with 8 assists and 9 rebounds against the Clippers nonetheless. And then against the Nets, although it was a loss, put up 29, 12, and 9. And not to mention, Giannis was supposed to be out for a much longer time. They were saying about 2 weeks until he was finally able to go back into practicing with the team. And that just breathes out this narrative that, like, what more could have LeBron have done had the season not have gotten cut short and everything else had happened? So, in my opinion, I think when you have to think about, what LeBron was doing, not just in those past 2 games, but all season, with the age, with his age and the fact that he hasn't, slowed down his role a bit, and the fact that he's taken all these new roles as a member of the Lakers and another very diverse team that I know we'll be talking about later on, it's been tremendous. So I really think that little window of Giannis getting hurt is what really opened the door for LeBron James to come in and take home another MVP.
I have to agree with both of your picks. I think it's either LeBron or Giannis. I don't know who I would lean more towards. LeBron certainly put up. I mean, he had a career high right now in assists, so I think that might be a big factor for him winning it. I mean, the only other player who you didn't mention that maybe has a shot, but I'm not high on him, is maybe Harden. Harden would be the only other name that could be a possibility, but again, I think it's a 2-player race of LeBron and Giannis.
I don't even think it's a 2-player race. I think Giannis has this 100% in the bag. I mean, the man is unstoppable, and you can't say, like, LeBron's late season, and it's so weird saying late season stuff, like basing things off the timeline of this season just because it's all been so wacky. But with Giannis averaging basically 30 points per game, 29.6, and the amount of rebounds he's getting every game, without Giannis, the Bucks might not even be a playoff team. Don't get me wrong, Chris Middleton's a great player. Dante DiVincenzo, great role player. Like, They just, without Giannis, they are a completely different franchise. Without LeBron, the Lakers still are an 8 seed. They have Anthony Davis and a number of other role players. Like, I just think Giannis is really, I mean, we all agree that he's one of the most special players we've seen in our lifetimes. And I just think his consistency, his ability to put the Bucks into that first seed and best record in the league when we finished up, I just think Giannis runs away with his second straight MVP.
I think it definitely, if the season would have kept going, would have been a closer race. But LeBron was really getting that MVP push in, end of February, early March before everything shut down. So
for sure, he turned up at the end of the season. Like he went on quite a roll there, and I think you're right. It would have been much closer if there was more time, but with that hard cutoff the NBA is setting for the award consideration, I think Giannis just did too much too early to be able to have LeBron catch up to him.
But it will be interesting to see how close the awards actually do get. So let's move on to another award. We did talk about the MVP, an award that also was a huge two-man race down the stretch, the Rookie of the Year award. So, Ja Morant, Zion Williamson missing a lot of games to start off the season, but once he was able to come back, really started putting up big numbers for the Pelicans. So, that this one is, I feel like should be more of a debate. I'm interested to know who you guys think should be the Rookie of the Year.
I don't agree with a two-player race, man. I think this has been Ja Morant all the way. I mean, listen, Zion has the better career path, I think. I mean, that he is going to be a phenomenal player, but just looking at this season, it's Ja Morant. He has, for what he has done for the Grizzlies, I think he should be absolutely Rookie of the Year.
Even if all 82 games got played this season, no coronavirus, no craziness with this season, what would Zion have played? 37 games, about something like that? Zion played 19 games this season. Whether this season is considered this 60-game thing or whatever, it doesn't matter. 19 games is not enough to win any award of any kind. I've played 19 games of pickup in one day before. Ja Morant was dominant all season long, and Ja Morant deserves this award more than anyone else.
You know what I think it is with Ja? I think a lot of his skills and the skill set he has just gets overshadowed by the hype that Zion got. And all that hype is stemming from what we saw from him in high school. And when he got into the league, obviously that's just going to overshadow everything. And, I mean, I think people really don't understand how great Ja Morant is. He is a franchise kind of player. He is a franchise player. There's no doubt about it. And just obviously, highlights aren't really the best way to, argue yourself, into, a conversation. But, I mean, the dunks he's been able to do on Aaron Baines, his attempt on Kevin Love would have ended the man's career easy. And then you look at the way he plays, his skill set when it comes to passing. A lot of people forgot that his number one skill, or at least it was a tie for his number one skill set when it came to scoring and his passing in college. And he transitioned that so easily when he got into the league. And he still does that so well. So when you think about that, you just have to remember that there's still a guy who went to Duke, who's doing dunks that people have never even seen before. And he's walking away, or at least he's walking into the league, and he dropped – I forget how many points he dropped in his first game in, but it was tremendous because he had, 5 straight threes, was it? And then just put New Orleans on a tear ever since then. Not to mention the fact that New Orleans is a way – or at least we like to believe that New Orleans is a way better team than the Grizzlies, considering the people they have in their lineups. Mm-hmm. But still, the fact that, the team that Zion is on is tremendous, and that helps him out a lot. But the fact that, the fact that his I just lost my train of thought. Okay. The fact that his hype stemming from high school and everything else is coming in, that's what's going to overshadow it. Because everyone got tired of Ja Morant and seeing what was doing, early on in the league, because we already knew he was a stud, whereas everyone else was still waiting for Zion to make his debut. So I think if Zion were to win, which I really don't think will happen, I really think Ja should honestly run away with it. But if he doesn't, I think it's going to be strictly off the hype from Zion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think don't get me wrong, I am a huge Zion fan. I love Zion. He's one of my favorite players already. But Ja has shown just such all-around prowess on all ends of the floor this year and has just showed complete dominance. I think there's another rookie on the Grizzlies that has had a better campaign than Zion just because of games played, and that's Brandon Clark. I think Brandon Clark and even guys like Kendrick Nunn on the Heat have had more impressive rookie campaigns than Zion, and that's strictly just because of Zion not being able to get on the court.
You can even argue that Jackson Hayes, his own teammate, has been having a very remarkable season too. So maybe
That's
that
true.
might overtake some of the shadow, but nonetheless, it's still going to be Zion and Ja in the conversation. And if it were up to me, I'd give it to Ja, no question.
I mean, of course, Ja Morant coming into the league has been nothing short of exceptional. I mean, I still remember it every time that dunk that he had against Marquette over the Hauser brother. I mean, that dunk in college was just absolutely exceptional. It's a Ja jam. That call of that game was extremely exceptional. But, you talked about his athleticism and the way that he's able to be productive on both ends of the floor. But I feel like you're still kind of cutting Zion short a little bit. Sure, he did miss a lot of games, and that's just natural with like the injury that he had. But you look at the stats that he had when he was able to play. I mean, 23 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, a player efficiency rating of 24. Those stats are just, better than Ja Morant. Of course, again, the games played is a little bit less for Zion, but I'm actually surprised at how, honestly, all three of you guys think that it's going to be a sure Ja Morant thing. I feel like, this one, considering how close you guys thought that the MVP one was going to be, I thought that this one would be a little bit closer because you see, all the experts and all of the people writing in the media and stuff like that say, like, Zion has a pretty good shot. And, I'll say it's pretty interesting to think that you guys think it's, that separate.
I think durability is an ability, and being able to stay on the court and play most of the season with your team and contribute to your team's success is important. The Pelicans got to, what are they, the 8 seed, right?
I want to say they're
8 or 9, yeah.
They're 9.
No, they're outside looking in. Yeah, they're like 9 or 10.
Grizzlies are 9, 8, and they're the
Grizzlies are 8, the Trailblazers are 9, the Pelicans are 10.
I knew they were super close, but like when your team is able to push themselves to like contention for the playoffs, when that whole roster is super young and he wasn't really a huge factor in them getting in that position. Granted, once he returned, he was a huge help on the court, but that roster of Lonzo, Brandon Ingram, who's had a fantastic season, Jackson Hayes, like they have a lot of talent on that court, and he's not the reason they're in this position to potentially use these weird bubble games before the true playoffs to push into that picture. And Ja just has done that for his team all season long.
But you also have to look at it too, the reason that the Pelicans are even as close as they are to the 8th seed was because Zion came back and was able to be as dominant as he was. Of course, you talked about the younger players for the Pelicans, and I'm not saying that they aren't great, but I think that with Zion on the floor, it makes the Pelicans have that much better of a chance to get that 8th seed, whereas if Zion wasn't on the floor, I think they would still be in the bubble, but they wouldn't be, as close or as many games behind as they are right now.
Yeah, but that's like saying in last year's season when Bron missed that extended amount of time with the shoulder injury, like, oh, if the Lakers had Bron all season, what could they have been? Like, it's just not realistic to consider like limited production like that.
That's something else that I think is going to be taken into consideration when these award picks are being made. They're going to think about like what was Zion's potential if the season had not gotten cut short?
Okay.
What was Zion's potential for the rest of the season? And I've had these conversations, with friends, and they think the whole idea of potential is idiotic because you never really know what's going to happen in the future. You just kind of have to live with what happened and, whatever happened. But potential is something that you really have to think about too, because for all we know, Zion could have gone off, had a godly season, and gotten him over the Grizzlies and into that 8th seed spot, because that was the narrative. It was going to be I remember a lot of people were saying, oh, the winner of the Rookie of the Year is going to be the guy who gets his team to the playoffs, considering how close they were to that 8th seed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard a lot of that argument as well.
That's not a bad idea, but since the season was cut off, that just makes it harder. And not to mention, it just makes it harder considering that, is there potential going to be a factor? Because you can't ignore that both guys had potential in their own, in their own respective ways.
And I mean, I think we all agree that both guys are going to be some of the biggest names in basketball for the next decade plus. Like, both of them are true superstars and are going to dominate the game for the next however long. But I just think when you're doing a one singular season award and one player has shown dominance for 60-some games and one has just such a small sample size, you have to give it to the guy who's given that effort for most of the season.
So we got 2 awards down on who we think is going to win the MVP and the Rookie of the Year. So we might as well keep everything flowing with these, I guess, end of the season, end of pre-restart NBA season, going to the Defensive Player of the Year award. Now, there's a couple of good players that could be in contention for this award. So, again, swinging it back to you 3 guys, who do you think should be the Defensive Player of the Year?
I think that there's a good number of candidates for this award. I think the most talked about candidates have been most likely our MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, as well as Lakers superstar Anthony Davis. But I really think a sleeper pick for the Defensive Player of the Year is Philly's own Ben Simmons. I think Ben Simmons has had one of the best defensive seasons, just like really low key, that we've seen in a while. Like, he's first in steals per game, first in total steals, second in total deflections, and first in defensive loose balls recovered. This man is hounding everyone when he's on the defensive end. He is all over every position, because not only is he being able to pickpocket all these players, but he's doing it playing and defending 4 different positions. The man guards point guards, shooting guards, small forwards, and power forwards. There's not that, you don't see that kind of versatility in the league that often. And his percentage versus team's number 1 option, his opponent field goal percentage versus team's number 1 option, ranks 2nd in the league. I just think Ben Simmons has had a great season on the defensive end, and his versatility, being able to defend 4 positions on the floor, really makes him a factor for this award. I don't think he'll win it, but I'd like him to. I think Anthony Davis will probably win it, and don't get me wrong, Anthony Davis has been one of the most dominant defenders in basketball since he was drafted. But I really think Ben Simmons needs to be looked at as more of a candidate than he has been.
Honestly, like the Ben Simmons pick. I think that's a great one. Similar to Ben, I see this as Giannis or AD as well. It could go to either one, and I think that would be a good pick for Defensive Player of the Year. Similar to Ben, I got one that I think is interesting that should seriously be considered for players, and that has to be Marcus Smart, man. He's one of the longest tenured Celtics and stuff. He's the longest tenured Celtic. And ever since he's been in the league, he has been a force on defense. He is having a great season. He does not back down from any defender. I think Marcus Smart should have some serious consideration for Defensive Player of the Year.
I have a bit of a conspiracy theory with defense.
Oh boy.
I'm ready.
Think about it like this. We already talked about MVP and how, LeBron and Giannis are going to be battling for, the whole way or at least, lack of, considering, what they've done up until March 11th. What's to say that they give MVP to LeBron, but since they don't want to shadow away from what Giannis has done this season, considering, the injury he had and the fact that LeBron really stepped up, that they give him Defensive Player of the Year to almost substitute that in a way. I mean, a lot of people were arguing that he should have gotten Defensive Player of the Year last year, which didn't happen. But, I mean, this season, what's to say that? And not to mention, Giannis, yes, he's having a tremendous year, but you also have to look at Anthony Davis and what Anthony Davis has done for the Lakers, as LeBron's, partner and everything. 2 blocks per game, 1.5 steals per game, and 7 defensive rebounds a game. So he's really been cleaning up all the dirty work for the Lakers, and he's been doing a lot. But, we've seen some, rather, what's the word I can use to describe this? Controversial picks for some awards. What's to say we won't see Giannis take home Defensive Player of the Year, since, the majority of fans of the NBA and, the majority narrative has been around LeBron not slowing down at all, and they just give him Depoy.
So I love, real quick, I always love NBA conspiracies, though, but with this one, isn't all that stuff public? Who voted for what and stuff? And also, one thing you said is, it would be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, and if I got this wrong, what you were saying, but did you say Giannis for Defensive Player of the Year would be controversial? Did I hear that right?
I wouldn't say it'd be controversial. Okay, maybe I did. Okay, let me rephrase.
Are you saying it'd be controversial if he won Depoy and not MVP, and rather than both?
Well, I wouldn't say it'd be controversial. Maybe those words did come out of my mouth. But at least in my opinion, I think Anthony Davis should be the pick for Defensive Player of the Year. So maybe that's where my mind might have taken that and, overshadowed Giannis for it. But I still think that considering everything Giannis has done and the fact that, he went out with missing 2 games before the NBA season was cut short, that it's going to hurt his MVP stock, especially when you add what LeBron did while he was out. It's going to hurt him a lot. So looking at that and then thinking about, the awards, let's say that, okay, they do give it to LeBron. What's not to stop them from wanting to give Depoy to Giannis? Obviously, with the work he's done, he's earned it. But in my opinion, I think Anthony Davis would have easily, well, not easily maybe, but Anthony Davis is almost a front runner in a way for that award, considering everything he's done. And I don't think we've seen someone win both MVP and Defensive Player of the Year since Michael Jordan, I believe. I believe he was the last person to do that. I can get fact checked at any point during this, but I really think that's the case.
Did Hakeem win MVP and Defensive Player of the Year? I could be wrong about that. Let's just say I'm right.
I mean, I always think you're right, Ryan.
I mean, the only person I can think would have done it sooner was probably Tim Duncan.
Who do you guys think are players who have the potential to, in them to do that? Because, like we're talking about, that's such a rare feat to win both of those awards in the same year. I think Giannis is one of those guys. I don't think LeBron can do it at this point in his career. I think Kawhi could do it. I think someday, I know I'm harping on my guy Simmons, but I really like Ben Simmons. I think he has the potential someday. Not soon, but maybe someday, especially in a different situation.
So the only players to win both the MVP and the Defensive Player of the Year award was Jordan, Hakeem, David Robinson, and Kevin Garnett.
Oh, Garnett. Okay.
Garnett. Okay.
So those are the only 4 players to do it, and I honestly don't think that this year is going to be a 5th player doing it. I do think that the NBA will try to stray away from it a little bit. Ronnie, I don't agree with your thinking about it, though, giving it to LeBron, giving the MVP to LeBron, and then giving Defensive Player of the Year to Giannis. I think Giannis has done too much at the start of the season and for him not to get the MVP award. So I do think that Giannis will get the MVP award, but I think they'll give the Defensive Player of the Year award to AD. Again, I think he's just been doing too much on the defensive end, just being dominant, getting blocks, and even getting steals as well. Of course, I do like Ryan, your pick with, or not pick, but you bringing up Marcus Smart, and then Ben, you bringing up Ben Simmons. I do think that those two players will probably be hopefully top 5 in the Defensive Player of the Year voting, but I do think that AD will probably get that Defensive Player of the Year award. Let's move on. Another award, the next award. I think another award that honestly could have a lot of good candidates for, and that's the Most Improved Player. I mean, there's a lot of players that I can think of right now, but the show is mostly you three. So let's get it right back to you guys. Most Improved Player of the Year.
I think the Most Improved Player of the Year, Will, I know we did a show for WSOU back when times were normal, and I think we both agreed that Bam Adebayo deserved the award, and I still think that holds true. I think Bam has had just an impressive season all around. His per 36 is ridiculous. I mean, considering last season he was the backup to Hassan Whiteside, and now he's contributing a ton to this Miami team that is looking to make a deep run in this playoff. I just think Bam has been able to contribute so much on both ends of the floor. I mean, he's averaging like a block and a half, 2 blocks per game, in addition to like 11 rebounds and 17 points. I think Bam has just improved so much from being a second-round pick to being just this dominant force for the Heat and being so reliable all season long. I think Bam is definitely a candidate, but I wouldn't sleep on Christian Wood of the Detroit Pistons. I think Christian Wood has had low-key one of the best years in the NBA. I mean, he's averaging 13, 6, and 1 on 57% shooting, and he's improved drastically. I mean, before this season, his highest points per game was 8.2, and that was in 21 games. Like, he was really a great player all season long, and I just think he's had a lot of success this season.
Like Ben, I'm going to go on the Bam train as well. I mean, I think he definitely is going to win this award. Just everything we've seen him improve at, that Ben talked about stats-wise. But, I mean, what more could you want out of an NBA big? I mean, he's a great playmaker, great defender, obviously amazing on the boards, super. He's been having a phenomenal season. And, yeah, his contributions to the Heat, him stepping up into that center spot and not missing a beat, I think that's a huge factor. And I think a correction, Ben, did you say he was a second round? I think he was first round, because I remember the Hawks in 2017 when I think he was drafted. We're looking at him and John Collins. So
I mean,
I just wanted to clarify.
It is what it is.
I'd
be wrong sometimes.
We all be wrong sometimes. What do you got, Ronnie? Who's your most improved?
Well,
oh yeah, he was the 14th pick of the draft. I'm an idiot.
You're good, Ben. It's all good.
Well, I guess I'll be the odd man out here and have to pick someone else. But I think Brandon Ingram has really made a strong push for this award. I mean, career high averages in points, rebounds, and assists. Not to mention, he is, at least before Zion came along, he was the leader of one of, if not the best young core in the NBA. And then you slap on top of that his first ever All-Star appearance this year. It's been tremendous. And, you know, what I think would set him apart from Bam Adebayo, Jason Tatum, and all the other guys who broke out this year would have to be the fact that it was a scene change. He needed a scenery change to really blow up.
For sure.
Because in LA, he was, I don't want to say he was a role player, but he wasn't, living up to the hype that a lot of people really, sought out from him. And a lot of people were starting to borderline call him a bust because he hadn't really broken out yet. Comes over to New Orleans along with Alonzo Ball and Josh Hart and a new system was very welcoming to young star players just like him. He comes in and he dominates it. Obviously, I think a lot of the attention had gone away from him, considering that Zion Williamson made his, appearance, and obviously it took over the league by storm, in a minuscule sense. But I really think Brandon Ingram, he's not getting very, much attention when it comes to this award, but I think he should be, considering all the, not all the drama, but all the adversity he had to face in LA, finally coming to New Orleans, a new home, and then finally breaking out.
Yeah, and honestly, Ronnie, I was going to bring up Brandon Ingram because, again, just having that whole scene change in the way that he was able to step up, able to improve his shooting too, from the Lakers to the Pelicans. The name that I'm also slightly surprised that neither of you guys brought up was Jason Tatum. And we talked about earlier how the Celtics are a great team right now and how they're standing third in the conference right now. And Jason Tatum has been one of those players that's really been stepping up for the Celtics. So I definitely think you watch out for his name on that ballot too.
I mean, I think the reason I didn't bring up Tatum is the same reason I didn't bring up someone like Trae Young, who both of them in their rookie campaigns just showed so much promise right away. I think it's hard to give most improved to someone who, like, we kind of knew was on this track of development with guys like Bam and Brandon Ingram. Like, their futures were looking kind of shaky, and they stepped up in big ways this season.
It's almost kind of like the Giannis point last year and stuff. Like, if he wins MVP, why can't he win Most Improved Player and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Ben. I mean, you have guys who are, they're slowly but surely on this rise, whereas you have guys who are just, they start plateauing and then automatically they shoot up in 1 year. So I think that's where the award has to go, where you're plateauing and then you shoot up. That deserves a Most Improved Player of the Year candidates.
Right. Like, Tatum and Trae Young were, like, able to really lay the groundwork in their rookie seasons and, like, show, like, oh, this guy has the potential to be the guy for their teams in the future. Whereas, like, Ingram, like, was traded for a reason. The Lakers weren't able to develop him into the player they wanted him to be. And look at him now in New Orleans, just playing fantastic basketball. Like you guys mentioned, he made the All-Star game. He's had a fantastic season. I would not be upset if Ingram won the award at all. I just think Bam has meant more to the Heat than Ingram has meant to the Pelicans, and that's the only factor I really think that puts Bam over him. And I just wanted to mention Christian Wood earlier just because he's had such a strange career bouncing from team to team, and now in Detroit he's really found a great role for him where he can come off the bench and contribute on all ends of the floor. But I really think this award does come down to either Ingram or Bam, just because of the sheer, like, level of stepping their game up they were able to make this season.
Well, I guess we just have to wait and see the mentality of the voters to see how they will vote for the Most Improved Player of the Year award. Final award, at least final individual award. Of course, there's other awards that players do get in the NBA or at the end of the season. But let's get to the Sixth Man of the Year award. And again, some solid names that I can think of off the top of my head, but I'm interested again to know what you guys think who should be the Sixth Man of the Year.
I know a lot of people have been looking at Lou Will to do what he's been doing, his whole career. One of, if not the greatest six men of all time.
Jamal Crawford Jr.
Jamal Crawford Jr. Exactly. And, yeah, he's been doing it well, and he's been, solid for a Clippers team who has more than enough to win the NBA championship this year. But something else that, has to get brought up is, or someone else that has to get brought up is Dennis Schroeder. And everything he's been able to do for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Because I'll get into his play style, after this, but you have to think about what OKC was handed going into this season. You lose your top 2 players in the offseason, and Paul George and Russell Westbrook, them going to respective other Western Conference teams nonetheless. And then they're dealt a Chris Paul, an aging Chris Paul, who a lot of people didn't think was, going to step up and, continue what we had seen Chris Paul do in the past, but he did. And a lot of it, a lot of what's helped him is the fact that he's had this person, sitting behind him on the bench, waiting to pick him up if he was ever starting slow. And that goes to Dennis Schroeder and everything he's been able to do for that team. So I understand Lou Will has been doing his thing for the Clippers, and, everything that he's been able to do in history will kind of, lead him up for an award like this. But if they want to switch it up, I think this is the year, and Dennis Schroeder should be walking away with that award.
Yeah, man, I completely agree with you. I think Schroeder's had a great season. I mean, in Atlanta, he was seen as like, this is our starting point guard who needs to be able to contribute on all ends of the ball. But that's just not the player Dennis Schroeder is. I think he fits so well into this 6-man role in OKC, where he's obviously found a lot of success. I mean, when the season was starting and OKC made that trade for Chris Paul, everybody, and also acquired Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the Paul George trade, everybody was saying, oh, well, what are they going to do with Schroeder now? Like, they have Chris Paul and this young guard that they're trying to develop. Schroeder's probably getting kicked out of town in just a season after he got there. But they decide to stick it out and keep Schroeder, and he's having a career season. I mean, he's going above and beyond. Like, honestly, he could be a candidate for most improved as well. I mean, his efficiency offensively has drastically improved. He's shooting career high field goal percentage wise. He's scoring close to his career high, and he's doing it from the bench. I just think Schroeder's been really impressive, but ultimately I don't think he'll get the award, because I think another Los Angeles Clipper will get the award, and that's Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl Harrell's had a fantastic season, being able to really be that just gritty player for the Clippers, being able to pull down rebounds, defend multiple positions. I think Harrell will come away with the award because the Clippers have had more success, but don't sleep on Schroeder.
All right, so mini rant time about the 6-man award. My biggest problem with it is it always seems to, and I don't know if this is all time, but it seemed like in the past few years, they've just given it to the guy who comes off the bench and scores the most points. I don't think that should be what the award is about. All right, now that is out of the way, I totally agree. I had the same guy down. Dennis, man, is going off right now for the Thunder, and I definitely think he is deserving of this award.
I think definitely the name that I thought would win this award is Montrezl Harrell. And again, just the way that he's able to help out that bench unit for the Clippers. And again, the success that the Clippers have had, of course, you look at their starters and the starters that they have, but Montrezl Harrell just off the bench, the way that he's able to be disruptive, the way that he's able to play that gritty defense, I do think he should get a nod for the 6th Man of the Year award. So enough of the awards and enough about the NBA season before March 11th. Let's get to now the NBA restarting. So, of course, players are going down to Disney and playing in their bubble, and we've seen a lot of things about the conditions down there in Disney, whether it's the food, the barbershop that they're building up in Disney, the court, all of that. So before we even get to the play, that is the NBA, we have to talk about the bubble. And just one thing that really intrigued you about the bubble that you've seen maybe on social media, on YouTube or stuff like that.
I'm excited to see how much VC each haircut costs.
And thinking about, the bubble and everything that we've seen, I don't know if you guys have done it, but have you guys been checking out Matisse Thybulle's?
Yes.
Dude, They're living the life, man. I went to Disney World the summer after my senior year of high school. I got flown out. Oh my, beautiful. Not to mention, they are staying at the Grand Floridian. And when I was with the people who I was
I
with,
can't afford to say that name.
exactly. I didn't even want to look in that direction when I found out, the pricing for everything. And they're staying there for free. They're living the luxurious life. And they get to play ball at the same time. I mean, the food doesn't look as great, but, whatever. They're doing whatever they got to do.
I feel like the
But-
food's actually fine. Like, we just saw a couple of bad pictures. If any of you have eaten at Disney before, it's all delicious. Like, I feel like the pictures are giving it a bad rap.
Well, I mean, according to what I've seen from Matisse, and also JaVale McGee is doing his own vlogs. So that's cool. But from what I've seen from the both of them, bringing it back to everything we've seen, I mean, it's a great lifestyle. They're getting care packages. They're getting masks. They're living the lifestyle over there. They get to do everything, they want, living in the Grand Floridian, which is a tremendous hotel over in Disney. Like I said before, the food doesn't look that good, but, whatever, they're doing their thing. And honestly, I think what Disney World is doing is great because they're getting tested twice a day. Each team has their own court, which is set up in a ballroom, which looks like something out of like a billionaire's mansion. It's something Michael Jordan would have in his basement or something. And then you got, everyone setting up, their Call of Duty gaming stations. I think Damian Lillard has his own rap studio in his room, which is dope. And then Patrick Beverley can have as many white T-shirts as he wants in his room. So that's a tremendous thing.
So there's a couple things for me that have been interesting about the bubble. One, coming into it, the snitch hotline. The NBA is the best drama on TV, just best drama out there.
No wonder their TV deals with TNT.
Good point, Ben. Very good point. I just think, it's funny how they worded it, but, yeah, that's what it's there for. One thing that, that cracked me up, and I guess I felt kind of bad, but not really, was the DJs. So I think it was a great idea for the players, but if you watch Dwight Howard's live stream, he was the only player there, which I'm sure the NBA didn't they were hoping yeah, guys are gonna come together and stuff, but nope, it was just Dwight, which was funny.
Can we talk more about Dwight for a minute and how apparently Dwight is anti-mask, anti-vax, in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah, I think, with a lot of stuff going on with the NBA and just all the sports and stuff, these players have so much, they're such an influence to, young minds and stuff. And I think it's a little unfortunate that there might be spreading misinformation, intentional or not. But no, yeah, that's a good thing to bring up about Dwight. Final thing I'll say about the bubble is I thought it was really nice that, players are having to get creative. And I thought it was super fun. I don't know if you guys saw with the Portland Trailblazers what CJ McCollum did for Damian Lillard on his birthday and stuff. He set something up outside of his room and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool that players are kind of getting creative with how they interact.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all these players interact with one another and how much contact they necessarily have with players from other teams. Because, I know, when all the players first get there, they have a certain amount of time they have to, quarantine and stay there self for a little bit. But I don't know at what point, they're allowed to start interacting with players from other teams and as well as from their own team. But I think it's going to be interesting, the implications this has on building teams through free agency, because, this is pretty much the ultimate All-Star weekend. We always talk about how All-Star weekend is, where future super teams and future free agent moves are figured out and where players make friends with players from across the league. this is the ultimate version of that, and it's going to last for like 2 months. So friendships are going to be made, and rosters are going to be shaken up by the relationships built during this strange bubble situation.
I mean, Ben kind of touched on the next point a little bit. Before we do get to that next point, recently it just came out that the NBA tested all 346 players that were in the bubble since last week. We're recording this on July 20th, so last week, July 13th. And no players in the bubble tested positive for COVID-19. So the bubble, as of right now, is definitely working, and people are staying away. I think last week, there was one player that was in the bubble that tested positive. So it's nice to see that he at least is cleared of COVID-19, or, he's outside of the bubble. I forgot what player it was off the top of my head. But the transition back to that point, in terms of players talking to each other, being stuck in that bubble, one coach, anonymously said that the next super team could possibly get built from this bubble. So Ben, you kind of touched on your ideas about it, or your opinion about it. So Ryan, let's go to you. What do you really think is really going to happen with this NBA bubble? And do you think that the next super team could possibly happen with all of this?
So I think really anything is possible with this. It sounds cliche to say, but anything is really possible in this bubble. I think Ben brought up the point of, it's a big all-star weekend. I think the thing that's maybe not going to form super teams and stuff, and we don't know how it's going to be when they start playing, but right now, teams are kind of in their own hotels. Like, they're all kind of grouped together and stuff. I know we've seen some interactions like Tobias Harris and Boban, but I think that might prevent some more like interactions and stuff, is the fact that the teams are so like spread out and stuff. And again, we don't know what those interactions are going to be like once games start.
Yeah, I mean, looking at or touching upon what you were saying, Ryan, each team is in their own space, but I remember when I was watching Matisse Thybulle's vlog, he said hello to TJ McConnell of the Pacers. Now, okay, that might not be a super team if you want to say, but let's just say, another player won't, go out there and say hello to whoever they need to. For all we know, Giannis can be chopping it up with some of the Heat players, getting his insights on what's going on in Miami. And before we know it, he's signing a max deal whenever it is that he can sign his contract for the Heat, and that's because he was able to talk to everyone he needed to talk to. Don't forget, Jimmy Butler is a very persuasive person in the league, and he has good connections with everyone. I
don't know if he has good connections with everyone. He's kind of severed a lot of relationships.
Well, nothing that will harm his team in the sense, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Also, Ronnie, do you have insider information? Is Giannis going to the Heat?
Ooh.
I do not. I just hope he goes to the Heat so he doesn't go to the Warriors.
I don't think any super teams are going to be built out of this situation because the Knicks weren't invited to the bubble.
I think there's definitely going to be some influence on upcoming free agents. I don't think a super team will get built, but I could definitely see, some players, even Giannis, to be honest with you, get influenced, seeing, how other teams might be acting, how players on other teams are acting. And of course, some players being persuasive in the way that they speak. But in terms of a super team, when we think of like, the Warriors, or when we think about like the Heat, when LeBron was on it, I don't think you're going to see any team to that caliber where we will call them a super team. But I do think that there are going to be some interesting free agency signings, and, some people who might have been on the fence for one team go to the other side of the fence to go on another team and sign with them because they were able to see what happened in the bubble.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. I think a lot of this is going to, like, it's one thing if this bubble happened last season when it was such a big free agency class, but this upcoming free agency class is just so mediocre. Like, I don't know if a super team can be formed out of this free agency period.
Well, in that sense, all it takes is one person to make it. And honestly, you can argue that wherever Giannis goes, that can be a super team. Put him in Miami alongside Jimmy Butler, Tyler, is it Hero or Hero?
Hero.
Hero. Put him down in Miami with Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. That's a super team if you ask me. At least it's a great duo in the sense. And, duos were the main theme looking at last year's offseason. Put them in Golden State, and we already know what's going to happen there because that would be tremendous. But for all we know, there are teams who, have the availability of a max contract and they can't sign players. And all they'll need is one player to come in and really shape them up and take them, over the edge to become title contenders. So, yeah, there aren't, 2 or 3 really, it guys who are going to be able to do it. But all it takes is one person to really go out there and do that. And the fact that Giannis is the highly touted free agent, that's good enough for me if you want to build a super team.
So now let's transition from the interactions in the bubble, and let's move now finally to the action on the court. So the NBA will be restarting on July 30th with the 2 matchups being the Jazz against the Pelicans to start everything off, and then the Clippers against the Lakers. So before, we even talk about the matchups, the NBA scheduling those 2 games, you have to be interesting, and it has to – I wouldn't say interesting. That wasn't the word I was looking for, but it's crazy to see that the NBA will utilize its 2 best matchups, especially the Clippers and the Lakers on the first night. So, there was a lot of talk about why would the NBA do this. So I want to get your guys' opinion on that. Do you think that the NBA starting with those 2 matchups should be the right 2 matchups to start off with?
I think so. Listen, you want to come back with a bang so that people really know what they were missing during quarantine. So I think if you're going to come back, you better put your top 2 teams battling it out in, the kind of scenario that they were in to really get their fans back. So I honestly thought it was expected. I honestly knew we were going to see the Lakers, on opening night. Was it going to be against the Clippers? No, they could have put them against the Bucks and, maybe a mini finals preview. We don't know yet. But, yeah, I really think it was the best move for them in terms of bringing back their attention and their fan base.
The league wants Zion in the playoffs so bad, man. I mean, this 8-game thing and the way they did, who's invited to the bubble and who's not, it's just the league's looking at these 8 games before the playoffs start as a real marketing opportunity, and they really hope games go a certain way in order to bring back the ratings they may have lost from this wild season. Ooh, that's interesting. How do you think the NBA's ratings are going to be when these games are televised? I think they're going to be huge.
Skyrocketing. That's why I bought a stock in Disney. So that
wow.
On
money moves, mogul moves. While I got the floor, I guess I'll really talk about. Absolutely love the Clippers-Lakers matchup. So again, as Ben said with Zion, the NBA wants Zion, and obviously, I guess they should be marketing him. I mean, he's next up, according to the NBA, and I would say he is next up to be a great player. But one thing I would have preferred is honestly a East matchup. So something like, Philly or Boston, maybe even Toronto and stuff matching up. But
Toronto versus Philly would be really cool, especially after what happened last year.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, the shot from Kawhi. Totally understand the Zion move, but, I think it would have been nice to get a East matchup.
I mean, we got to talk about more than just these first games. I don't think this 8-game playoff finalization thing is necessary. I think the league should have just quit wasting time and gone straight into the playoffs in the bubble. Maybe give teams 2 exhibition games or the opportunity to play each other by choice, because like I feel like a lot of this should be up to choice during this situation and player comfortability. But I guess if we are going to do these 8 games, I hope they're good. It's going to be nice to – I think it'll be nice for the players not to have to go straight into highly competitive playoff basketball, but I think exhibition stuff could have been an option.
I think well, first to go on to the original point with the first 2 matchups, I think they kind of wasted a matchup with the Clippers and the Lakers and even the Jazz against the Pelicans, because you got to look at the players that's going to be playing in that game. They're going to be rusty that first game. And, will it be a good matchup? The headlines for those matchups, are they going to bring in numbers? Yes, but if the players are rusty, are people really going to stay and watch the games? If LeBron, which wouldn't happen, but just as an example, if like LeBron's missing easy layups or something like that, are people really going to sit there and watch? Or if Zion's not as explosive, if he does come back to the bubble, if he's not as explosive, are people going to be interested in watching those games? That's it. I don't think they should have started off with those matchups. I think starting off with matchups maybe, like you said, the 76ers and the Raptors, I think that probably would have been a better matchup to start off with. And then having those 2 matchups to start off that they're starting off with, be a little bit later in this 8-game series or in the 8-game regular season, maybe even, that second day where they have everybody playing. I think that probably would have been a little bit better. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have people watching that first day. You're going to have people tune in on July 30th one way or another, no matter what the matchups would be. Even if it wasn't, Los Angeles against Los Angeles, or if it wasn't, the Pelicans against the Jazz, people are going to tune in one way or another. So I think they could have utilized a different way to start off the season. In terms of the 8-game series or 8-game regular season that they're having in the bubble, cutting it in half maybe would have been the way to go. Because, again, more on the West than the East, those West teams are really, really, really close. And, yes, does the NBA want Zion in the playoffs? Probably, because he's going to bring in numbers. I mean, he's the cover athlete for NBA 2K. But I think – you have those positions just being a little bit too close in the Wizards, or not, excuse me, that's the East, the West side. You're having a little bit too close with the Trailblazers, with the Pelicans trying to battle in for that 8th spot. So I do think, you should have those playing games. But, 8 might be a little bit too much. So to continue going to the playoffs, to start off, I want to ask you, do you think, before we even get into any of the teams or something or anything like that, a dark horse team and a team that we think will win in the conference, do you think that there should be an asterisk on these finals? Because, again, it's a time that nobody really predicted, and it's a shorter season, and they had a lot of weeks laid off and just not really doing much. You had players that might not really have a good environment to work out, and you have other players that have a great environment to work out during the whole pandemic. So should these NBA finals have an asterisk on it, whoever wins it?
I think there should be an asterisk on it, but for the opposite reason. It is the meme of KD, the hardest road. There is no other champion. Ben liked that one, yeah. The hardest road. This literally is the hardest road. No other champion can say that they went through a pandemic. This has never happened where a season has halted and been picked back up. So absolutely there should be an asterisk on it, because this has been unprecedented for any champion.
I mean, I don't think there should be an asterisk on but I think NBA fans and people who follow the league will put one on there personally and consider this season lesser than it is. I feel like whoever wins this championship will just be looked upon as a lesser champion than any of the past. Like in baseball, the Astros didn't get their championship stripped of them, but no one considers them to be true champions. Obviously, there's no cheating scandal involved here in the NBA, to our knowledge. But I'm saying that the unusual factors that have come into play are going to affect the perception of this year's champion. But I mean, whatever team wins it all should still be proud of what they've accomplished. No matter what, two great teams are going to reach the finals in this bubble, and a 7-game series is difficult to win under any circumstances, much less in these outrageous ones during the middle of a pandemic. Like, I don't know. I think certain people will look on it as lesser, but I think the finals champion will still be seen as a true champion of the basketball. I don't know. It's just such a strange situation that we'll likely never encounter again. Knock on wood.
I don't know about you guys, but this gives me a lot of, 1990 I don't know about you guys, but this gives me a lot of 1999 lockout, maybe 2011 lockout vibes, because it's so weird just to see, this big break when basketball is supposed to be played, and then they come back. Don't be shocked if an 8 seed makes it all the way to the finals, because that can happen right now. It happened in 99, which is why I brought it up. The Knicks were able to make the finals as an 8 seed, but unprecedented unprecedented times. We don't know. I mean, once again, knock on wood, hopefully no one gets infected, because there are some players who have left the bubble and they're waiting to come back. But knock on wood, we don't know who can get sick. We don't know who can get injured. For all we know, a team could really surprise us. And we'll just have to wait and see for that.
These playoffs are going to be special. I don't think there should be an asterisk on this, but you're really going to see who's the better team, because, again, of course, people had different workout plans during the pandemic, but at the end of the day, no home court advantage, nothing like that. It's just, two teams going at it and seeing who's the better team. Of course, a lot of when you have that home court advantage, the crowd plays in such a huge factor in, how people perform and stuff like that. But with no crowd, no noise, nothing like that, it's just short guts and wit, for you to try to beat a team. So, you know what, Ronnie, I don't think, you saying that an 8 seed, is too far off the wall. I think that, that could possibly happen in the 8 seed going to the finals or something like that. But, I mean, will it be difficult? Of course it would, but it's not completely out there. So now let's get back to, the playoffs, and let's get back to these individual teams. Let's start off with a dark horse, a team that really might not be a favorite or might be a lower seed that you could possibly see go to the NBA finals or go to the conference championship.
My dark horse will have to be the Miami Heat. Here's why. They are 2-0 against the Bucks, the only team to beat the Bucks, consistently on that manner. And I mean, everything that the Heat has done and Jimmy Butler, what he's brought to that team, has been tremendous. Not to mention, we didn't get to see much of Andre Iguodala, after joining the Heat. So everything him and Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, it's tremendous. So I think coming out of the East, it'll have to be, Miami. That's going to be my dark horse. And depending on who they were to, hypothetically face in the finals, it'll be a interesting, outlook. So my pick for a dark horse is definitely Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's going to be any big upsets in these playoffs, or the weird seeding after these 8 games is going to change anything really. I mean, this is the NBA. We, for the most part, know who's good and bad before the season starts every year. The only variables we ever really see in this league are the teams who over or underperform slightly, either getting into that 3 through 5 spot that they weren't expected to get to, or dropping down to that 6 through out of the playoffs and underperforming. I don't think there's any teams that are in contention to win it all out of nowhere, because for the most part, we've always known the consistent level of talent teams have in this league. But if anyone's going to surprise anyone to like the where they get, I agree with you. I think the Heat are going to find a lot of success. I think that the Rockets are another team that could do the same. I even OKC to a certain point, like they had a lot of regular season success, and they're a really interesting team to look at in this bubble just because they weren't even supposed to make the playoffs when like they are one of those teams that have definitely exceeded expectations this season. But as for like winning it all, I don't see anyone but the usual suspects getting in those finals.
I would have to agree with both Ben and Ronnie about the Heat. They're definitely one of the teams on my list who I think could be a dark horse. And I agree with what you just said, Ben, too. I think it's going to be the usual suspects for the finals. I like the wording of that. But as far as conference finals goes, I think there's – maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think there's a lot of question marks in the East. Outside of the Bucks, though, I think it is absolutely going to be the Bucks, at least in the conference finals. But I think it could be for conference finals in the East. It could really be anyone. I could see the Raptors doing it. I could see the Celtics doing it. Maybe the Sixers. And, yeah, I'm pretty high on the Heat right now. So I think that's the biggest kind of dark horse question mark is what the Eastern Conference Finals is going to look like. Because you have a lot of quality teams in the East who are gunning for that spot.
Honestly, I mean, of course, again, the Heat, I think, are a pretty good team. But a team that I'm actually interested to see in the bubble will be the 76ers. And the way that they're changing up their lineup to have Shake Milton at the 1 and then you're moving Ben Simmons over to the power forward position. I think with that change of a lineup, I think that the 76ers could really do some damage because, you know, we talked about it earlier, how Ben Simmons can guard that 1 through 4 position. So with him now starting at the 4, you know, it could be interesting in terms of switches, in terms of, you know, things like that on the defensive end. And on the offensive end, of course, you know, it's going to be a mismatch most of the way through because Ben Simmons can handle the ball like a point guard. And we've seen how Shake Milton, you know, the flashes of what he was able to do in terms of being electric and scoring the basketball as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the 76ers, I believe, will step up in the bubble with this new lineup change.
Yeah, and I think Joel Embiid is definitely one of those players that is going to come out of this strange, empty period of time without basketball very hungry and ready to perform on a higher level and try to correct the mistakes of the past. I mean, we all saw how emotional he was after that Game 7 loss last year. And I think him, Simmons, all the guys who have stuck around with that franchise, Tobias, I think the Sixers are a very hungry team that have a lot of talent that just weren't consistent this regular season. And a lot of it had to do, like, they're defensively, they are one of the best teams in the league, but they cannot shoot to save their lives. And I think moving Simmons to the 4 could help their offensive production, but I don't know if it's the solution in terms of the teams around them in the East that have kind of been able to figure out their style of play all season long. Having to switch the way you play this at this time, I don't know if it's going to be able to work in time for them, and they'll be able to really figure out their chemistry with Simmons at the 4 full time. I don't know. There's just so many question marks around the 76ers. I'd rather go with a team that's more of a sure thing from the East.
So let's get into it now, the NBA Finals. I mean, all of you guys said the short teams will probably make the NBA Finals, so I'm interested to know your matchup for the NBA Finals and who do you think is going to come out victorious?
I mean, I'll start. I think the Western Conference Finals are going to end up as Clippers versus Lakers. I think the Eastern Conference Finals are going to end up as the Bucks versus – I keep flip-flopping between the Heat and the Celtics. I think it's going to be one of those teams. I think Toronto is not going to benefit from this long period of time without basketball. Because they're just such a young team. Like, yes, they're the defending champions, and you have to respect that. They have a fantastic coach in Nick Nurse, but I really think it's going to be either Bucks Heat or Bucks Celtics. But I think the Bucks are going to make it to the finals either way, and I think the finals is going to end up Clippers Bucks in 6.
I'm gonna stick with my dark horse here, and I'm gonna say the Heat are gonna make it to the finals. And I'm going to have to pick the Lakers over the Clippers. I just think there's too much going on with the Lakers, with the tragic death of Kobe Bryant and, everything that LeBron has done, at this stage in his career and everything surrounding them, for them to not make a push for at least the NBA Finals. With that being said, between the Lakers and the Heat, I'm going to give it to the Lakers in 6 with LeBron taking home Finals MVP.
So you have, hold on, just to clarify, you have the Heat advancing to the finals?
Mm-hmm.
I respect it.
I do too.
Listen.
I don't.
Listen.
This man loves him some Tyler Herro.
2-0 against the Bucks. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt if they meet in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, but like streakiness from this past regular season does not matter. That was months ago. It's ancient history.
Well, how about this?
These games are going to be based on talent.
Well, how about this? They beat the Heat when the season first started in October in a double overtime game, and then their last win against the Heat was in March. Or their last win against the Bucks was in March. So a 5-month span in between each matchups, and they still come out on top.
Okay. I respect the logic. I just think it – okay. I get it.
It's a bold prediction. I was kidding with the no respect thing. But I'm happy that Ben went with the Clippers. I thought I was going to be the only one saying Clippers out of the West. I guess I'll get into that later. But real quick, I have Bucks without a doubt making it out of the East. I mean, you have Giannis. They have extremely good depth, extremely good role players. I think we mentioned them early on in the episode. Dante DiVincenzo, good coaching system too. Bud is a mastermind, great system. I think real quick the Clippers are going to come out of the West. I think it has to do with the matchups. In the West, I think they are the only ones who can go against the Lakers, at least like trying to contain LeBron and Anthony Davis. The Lakers are maybe a bit deeper, but I think the Clippers have more quality players coming off the bench. I think coaching might play a factor. Doc Rivers, having been in these tough situations, gone to the finals before, won a finals before. And I think the leadership too, talking about coaching of Rivers and Kawhi might play a factor too. As far as winning the NBA finals go, I think I would give it Bucks. Ben stole my joke, Bucks in 6, but yeah, I think it's going to be the Bucks. And, if we're talking about finals MVP, I think that would have to be Giannis, unless Middleton has an insane series. He would be the only other one, at least from the Bucks, that I could see winning the finals MVP.
I mean, Ryan, I think I agree, but I also disagree with you. I think that the Clippers are a much deeper team than the Lakers. I don't think J.R. Smith, a year out of basketball, being thrust into like a prominent role on that team is going to be helpful. I don't think JaVale and Dwight Howard is an impressive combo, especially if Dwight keeps walking around no mask, just begging for the Rona. Like I think the Clippers just have a lot of depth and are just going to – their consistency on the court was there all season. The Lakers were hot and cold at some points in time, and I just believe in the Clippers' depth and ability to play team basketball more than I believe in LeBron and AD's ability to carry those role players. And just, if you know me, I have a thing for team basketball. It's my favorite type of basketball. I hate watching one-on-one. And not that the Lakers play one-on-one kind of like the Rockets do, but like they rely so heavily on Bron and AD. I just think in a situation like this, the depth of the Clippers, especially after adding Marcus Morris late in the season, like they just have so many players who can get it done on various levels. I think the Clippers are my favorite to get to the final, and Twitter's going to yell at me, but it is what it is.
No, I think you bring up a good point about the depth, and I guess a little more as I think about it. I guess the Clippers would be deeper too. You talk about adding pieces. Reggie Jackson signed with them, right? Too. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great signing as well. I hope Twitter doesn't yell at you, Ben. I think that's a good pick, the Clippers. So.
And on the Eastern side, I think the Bucks, like, obviously we can all talk about Giannis all day, but Chris Middleton is a bona fide superstar. Like, he's only the 5th player in NBA history to have this season where he's averaging over 20 points and also his percentages lining up to 50, 40, 90. Like, Chris Middleton is a special player for that Bucks team, and they have a lot of depth as well. Just with George Hill and Eric Bledsoe in that backcourt. Dante DiVincenzo has stepped up a lot this year, and the Lopez twins holding it down low next to Giannis. I think the Bucks just have that same factor of they have a lot of guys who can get it done and do what they need to support their superstars that the Clippers do, and that's why I think that's going to be such a great finals series.
Now, before I give my opinions, Ryan had said it the finals MVP. I don't know why I pointed this way. I pointed this way because you're on this side of me, Ryan. But I just realized right now that you might not be on this side of me when I'm like over there. But Ryan,
we find out Ronnie's just sitting next to Wilnir. That's why he pointed at him.
But Ryan, you kind of brought up the finals MVP. So for Ronnie and for Ben, who do you think would be the finals MVP?
I mean, I have the Bucks winning. I think it's hard to see the Bucks winning a series and Giannis not being the deciding factor.
I got to give it to LeBron. I just think he's going to, prance right into the finals. He's a year removed from his, finals run. So he's going to come back in well experienced. He really is the only finals experienced one there. So it'll be hard to see someone else come in and really, shape up whatever they have going on.
You mean like finals MVP Kawhi Leonard?
On his team.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like coming out of the West.
No. Like in the finals, the legit.
Gotcha.
Also, real quick, LeBron's it's not even a finals drought. It's a playoff drought too. I mean, I know he got injured, but yeah. But real quick, Ronnie, do a quick aside. Why don't you think AD, is just LeBron's like his star power and his everything? Like, why don't you think it could maybe be AD?
Here's the thing.
Dude, come on.
Your question. Come on. You don't respect that then?
Here's the thing. For all we know, it could be AD. I mean, we saw Andre Iguodala win a finals MVP on a stacked Warriors team. So
should he have?
That's not the point. The point is he got it. So really, anything could really happen when it comes to these finals. But for the most part, I think the fact that LeBron knows what it takes, and the fact that we know he enters this different kind of zone when the playoffs start. Like I said, I think it will be hard to see someone other than LeBron leading the way once or if they get into the finals. So that's why he's my pick.
I think for me to tie a bow on the Orlando NBA, we will just briefly touch on the second bubble up in Chicago after this. But just to tie a bow on my predictions for the NBA Finals, I think the Clippers would advance if it was single elimination or best out of 3. But I think best out of 7, you probably have. I'm going to give it to the Lakers. I think that AD and LeBron they have too much star power for them to fall in a 7-game series against the Clippers. Over on the East, again, since it's a 7-game series, I think the Bucks will probably win it in 6 or 7 on the East. Again, the Heat, they definitely could push the Bucks towards 6 or 7 games, but I do think that the Bucks will advance. It'll be the Bucks against the Lakers in the finals, and I think the Lakers will edge it out. Again, I think LeBron and Anthony Davis are just too much for teams to handle. And I think, with this time off, with both players being able to recover a little bit, and I do believe that both players, if I'm not mistaken, probably had a better workout regimen than other players, during the whole pandemic. So not to say that they're going to be at basketball conditioning, but they'll probably be a little bit better conditioned than other teams, or other players. So I do think the Lakers will come out of it. I want to give the Finals MVP to Anthony Davis, though, because I think Anthony Davis he's a little bit better defensively than LeBron and a little bit more efficient offensively, at least over the past season, than LeBron. Not to say LeBron is a bad player, but I think Anthony Davis is just a tad bit better than LBJ. So I'm going to give the Finals MVP to Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, Will. LeBron just isn't a good player. I think he's a role player on that LA team, and Anthony Davis is the man in that town.
Okay. Will, you brought up a good point. Considering the role LeBron James has on the Lakers, and where he's taking more of a facilitator role and the more passing role, really, kind of manning everything that goes on, that opens it up for everyone else to step up around him. And that's why you can argue AD has, been as good as he's been this season. So, though I did, pick LeBron to go out and win a Finals MVP, if there is a year for LeBron to win a championship and not win Finals MVP, I think it'll be this one, just because he's been focused more on, passing the rock and getting his teammates open off of that sense. So it really opens it up for someone else on that Laker team to show out in the finals.
We're slowly but surely running out of time, so we got to end this one here. Again, thank you for tuning in to PTV's coverage of the NBA restart. For Ryan Clayton, Ronny Castaneda, and Ben Harris, I'm Wilnir Louis saying thank you for tuning in. Make sure you go check out our other restart videos. Stay safe and stay healthy.